Today we're doing P5, Factoring Polynomials, Day 1. Our learning goal is that you will be able to factor polynomials using the GCF method, grouping, and factoring trinomials. So we'll first start with the first method, which is GCF, which means we're factoring out the greatest common factor. So this is my polynomial, and all you're doing is trying to find out what term do they have in common. And so for this one, it would be 9x squared, and if I divide both of these terms by 9x squared, I'm going to get 2x plus 3. So that's the greatest common factor. And if you distribute it back, you should get what you started with. And then let's try another one. If you look at these two terms, both of these terms have an x plus 3. So you'll just factor out the x plus 3. And in the first term, you have an x squared left over. In the second term, you have a 5. And if you distribute it back, you should get back what you started with. Okay? Then we have what we call grouping. Grouping, when you have grouping, you're still kind of doing GCF. But what happens is there's no common factor to all of these terms other than 1. So what you do is you group them together. So we're going to group these two and these two. And we look and see what they have in common. So the first two have an x squared in common. And then you're left with x plus 4. And in the second term, they have a 3 in common, and you're left with x plus 4. Now if you notice, see this in parentheses? It's exactly the same. So it's going to be back to how we did example B, example 1B. You factor out what they have in common. So they both have an x plus 4. And then you write what's left. So x squared plus 3. And when you write it out, and I should have done this on example 1B, you can go back and write this too, but write them as factors. So it's x plus 4 times x squared plus 3. And then example 1B, it's x plus 3 times x squared plus 5. Okay, I'm going to do another one. So this is another grouping. I'm going to group these two and these two. And in the first two terms, we have an x squared in common. And then you're left with x plus 5. And in the second two terms, see this negative? You have to keep that sign. So I'm going to take out a negative 2. And I'm left with x plus 5. And then you do like we did before. They both have an x plus 5 in common. And then if you write what's left, that'll be x squared minus 2. And if you multiply it back out, you should get back what you started with. So that's grouping. And now we're going to move to factoring trinomials. A trinomial, tri means 3 terms. Looks like this. And this is where you're going to really need to know your factors in your multiplication table, because here we have to find out two factors that would give us x squared, so we know it has to be x and x. And then two factors that would give us 8. But the key is those two numbers that we use have to add up to 6. And so the only two that will work would be 4 and 2. And so we need them to be positive. And then you're done. And you always go back and multiply back out just to make sure you get the right answer. And we can do another one. Alright, so we need an x squared. So we need an x and an x. And then we need a 40. And you know, 40 has a lot of factors, but the two that we need have to add up to 13. And the only ones that'll work would be 8 and 5. And then you're done. And even if you have like a negative, okay, you need a x and an x to make your x squared. And now we need a negative 14. So we have 1 and 14, 7 and 2. 7 and 2 are the only two that'll work. And since we have to add them together to get negative 5, the bigger number takes this sign. And then you're done. I'm not sure if you noticed on the last slide or the previous example, the leading coefficients were all 1. However, when it's not 1, you have to do a little different. Now, all of you learn how to factor differently in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, so you can use whatever factoring method you wanted to. I'm going to show you what's called trial and error. And if you don't like that way, I could show you different ways to do it. But we need to make an 8x squared, so we could either use 8x and x, or 2x and 4x. And then we need to make a negative 3 on the two last, so you can use 1 and 3. Okay? Now, our goal is when you do the outer and the inner, it has to make a negative 10. So this outer is 24, that's a 1. This will not make it. Over here we would get a 6 and a 4. 6 and 4 could make negative 10, but since one of them has to be negative and one has to be positive, that's not going to work out. So then you try a different combination. And you just switch the 1 and the 3 around. And over here, you do the same thing. So this will be an 8 and a 3. That won't work. And this will be 2 and 12. That's a possibility. So 2 and 12 can make 10. since we need a negative 10, then the bigger number, which was the 12, takes that sign, and the smaller number takes this sign. So our factors would be 2x minus 3 and 4x plus 1. And if you FOIL it back out, you should get back what we started with. And then let's try another one just to make sure you got it. Okay. So we got to make a 6x squared, so we can use 6x, 1x, or we can use 2x and 3x. And then we need a negative 7. We can use 1 and 7. That's the only choices we can use to make negative 7. Now remember, when we multiply the outer and the inner, we got to make a 19. So this will be 42 and 1. Won't work. This will be 14 and 3. Won't work. So what I'm going to do is change or switch the 1 and the 7. Okay, this will make 6 and 7. That won't give us 19. This will make 21 and 2. Yes. Since we need a positive 19, the bigger number has to be positive. That's the 21. And the smaller number has to be negative. So my answer would be 2x plus 7 times 3x minus 1. And if you FOIL it back out, you should get that trinomial that you started with first. Now, if you found a different way, an easy way to factor, you can use whatever way you want, as long as your two factors, that's our answer, multiplies to give you back what you started with. And that's it for factoring for the first day.